Quick disclaimer here. This video includes some discussion of unions. I am a member of a healthcare union, and I have been a member of various healthcare and education unions for most of the past 2 decades. That done, let's get on with the video. Tesla, Toyota and Honda walk into Congress. The politicians ask, "What would you like?" And they all say, "No new EV tax credit." Ba-dum-tish! Maybe the punchline needs some work. Possibly even the whole joke. But hey, our writer's room is somewhat smaller than Samantha Bee's. This week, it's come to our attention that in a weird turn of events, Tesla, the leader in automobile electrification and the maker of the first, second, 8th and 10th best-selling EVs in the United States this year, has found itself lobbying hard against an extension of the EV tax credit, and in bed with companies that are lobbying hard to block the push for cleaner transportation entirely. Who knows, maybe Akito Toyoda had a rough night and drunk dialed his ex. But however it happened, it seems that Toyota and Tesla are back together and having a bit of a menage a trois with Honda right now. But why? Well, we're going to have a look at what's in the House version of the Build Back Better Budget Reconciliation Bill that's currently in markup in the Ways and Means Committee, and see why these 3 companies, amongst others, are lobbying hard to make it go away. Incidentally, before we go further, markup is a process in which proposed bills receive changes through amendments, or in some cases they have the entire proposed text completely replaced in committee. It's a process that is open to the public, and obviously companies have quite a lot of sway through lobbyists and donations to favourable politicians. When a majority of the committee are happy with the wording, they'll vote to advance the bill to the chamber for a floor vote. Then there's more debate about changes, and the final bill that gets passed can look nothing like the one that started out in committee, or pretty much the same. Because we're lacking a flux capacitor right now, we're going to be discussing the bill as it stands today. Now, as we said in our earlier video on the bipartisan infrastructure bill, linked to up here and in the description, the text of this bill is very long, so there are for sure going to be some things hiding in it that aren't obvious at first glance. Sadly, we don't have a massive team of staffers to dig through the 645 pages of the bill, find the original bill's text this bill would modify, and work out the implications of every line of text in it. But should you want to dig in, we've popped a link to the text as it stood on the day of writing in the description below, and the section on electric vehicles kicks in on page 282 for those wanting to play along at home. For people who don't know, in the United States, while individual states may have rebates and credits towards electric vehicles, and also sometimes for electric vehicle charging equipment, federally, the EV tax credit has expired or started to wind down for several automakers in the US. The tax credit was originally intended to cover some of the cost of introducing and producing electric vehicles, until economies of scale brought down their cost, helping to absorb some of that cost difference so that consumers could actually afford to buy an EV. And that economy of scale moment was deemed to have happened when an automaker sold 200,000 qualified vehicles. Tesla, unsurprisingly, hit that milestone back in 2018, and over the next 4 quarters that credit ramped down to 0 for Tesla vehicles. General Motors similarly hit the 200,000 mark towards the end of 2018, meaning that the Bolt, and the Bolt EUV, if Chevrolet was actually able to build or sell any right now, wouldn't be eligible for the tax credit, and in fact haven't been eligible for some time. Nor is any other vehicle from either of those automakers able to get the tax credit. Ironically, as it stands at the moment, the tax credit benefits automakers who have been laggards in the race to electrify, because now they're gifted a price advantage over automakers who've been pushing ahead on electrification. And given that we've not yet hit price parity for EVs and ICE vehicles, that economies of scale calculation, it looks to have been a little bit off. So, since the new proposed language would remove that 200,000 vehicle cap, and Tesla definitely talks the talk on affordability, then why is it opposed to the Democratic House members' planned expansion of the federal tax credit, and other tweaks and changes that they've proposed to it? Well, to answer that question, we're going to have to get into the weeds a bit. As it stands, the new version of the tax credit will run until 2031 and provide a rebate up to a maximum of $12,500, although it cannot exceed 50% of the vehicle's cost for a qualified new fully electric vehicle purchase. The chunk of credit that you can get if you buy a car is made up from a few things. The base credit is $4,000, on top of which there's up to $3,500 that's linked to the size of the battery. To get that extra chunk of rebate, the vehicle has to have a battery larger than 40 kilowatt hours if it's sold before 2027, and 50 kilowatt hours after 2027. Unfortunately, I can see this really hampering uptake, or indeed even the possibility of getting any small or mid-size vehicles into the US market. But perhaps, if it squeezes really hard, maybe Honda could pack 40 kilowatt hours into the Honda E's svelte little frame and give one to me. And yes, I'm surprised by how many of you clearly hate the Honda E, not for its teeny tiny battery or its inefficient drivetrain, but because you don't like the looks. How can you hate that cute little face? Oh, and it's important to note that after 5 years, the base and battery credit is only applicable to US-made electric vehicles. Okay, so that takes you from 4 to 7.5K. What makes up the rest of the rebate? Well, there's $5,000 for domestic components and union assembly. And how that $5,000 is divvied up is almost certainly the part that made Elon Musk tweet, "This is written by Ford/UAW lobbyists as they make their electric car in Mexico. Not obvious how this serves American taxpayers." Because to score that extra $4,500 of yummy rebate goodness, the vehicle has to be produced domestically. By which I mean in the United States and not, say, in a kitchen. And here's the part that I suspect twists Tesla's tail: it must be built in a plant with a collective bargaining agreement. Or, to put it another way, a union factory. And Tesla, as we know, is not a union shop. Now, the Democrats' argument for supporting unionization in general is backed up by Bureau of Labor statistics that show that, on average, union workers receive higher wages, larger wage increases, and have better access to employer-provided benefits. Okay, but what are the issues for specific automakers? Well, as with most corporate issues, it's kinda opaque, and so it's difficult to compare whether Tesla's non-union workforce receives equal or better compensation than they would receive were Tesla unionized. But my very limited research suggests that, for example, there's no difference between the average wage of a Ford assembly line worker in a unionized Ford factory and a non-unionized Tesla assembly line worker's pay. So we're left wondering whether it's reasonable to punish Tesla so harshly. It seems likely that part of the reason for the size of the difference between the two chunks is an attempt to keep the union on side, but that does suggest there's been a very high price to pay for the even somewhat tepid union support we've seen for Biden's clean vehicle transition. But there are some really neat tweaks in this bill that do have some clear positive benefits. Tax credits are a fairly terrible way to get EVs into the hands of those who could otherwise not afford them. A far more effective way would be a point of sale rebate, because if you don't have sufficient tax liability to reclaim the money later, then you never get that money back, and you have to have the money in the first place. Which has been a problem that the EV tax rebate in the US has had since it was created. It's effectively helped people, mostly, who really didn't need the help. Though, as always, remember, I am not a tax professional, so don't take tax advice from me. Or anyone here at the channel. And fixing that tax credit versus rebate situation is one of the other most important changes this bill makes. The new rebate would be refundable at the point of purchase, which means that people on lower incomes can actually benefit from the rebate. Not only that, but the legislation, at long last, adds a $2,500 tax credit for the purchase of a used EV. Given the ridiculous prices used EVs are going for in the United States right now, that's enormously important. And by ridiculous, we're talking $15,000 for a 7-year-old sub-100-mile EV with no rapid charging. No, I am not joking. I wish I was. There are some other important things to note. Unlike the old tax credit, the new tax credit would have price caps, which vary by type of vehicle. At the bottom are sedans with a maximum retail price of $55,000, and at the top are pickup trucks with their maximum of $74,000. SUVs and vans sit in the middle. There's also a maximum income threshold, which seems pretty reasonable, since if you're earning enough to buy a Porsche Taycan, you probably don't need to have help buying it. So the proposed rebate drops by $200 for every $1,000 you earn over the limit. The limit is, incidentally, $400,000 for a single person or $800,000 for a married couple filing jointly. That earnings cap is different for the used EV rebate, incidentally. There's also some rebate love in there for plug-in hybrids capable of operating substantially on electricity, with battery capacities greater than 7 kilowatt hours. Although, as with pure electrics, the requirement increases to 10 kilowatt hours usable capacity, but in this case that happens in just 2 years' time. And pleasingly, 2- and 3-wheeled EVs also get a rebate, $2,500 or up to 10% of the purchase price, as long as the battery capacity exceeds 2.5 kilowatt hours, which should please our Arkimoto and Zero fans, among many others. That's kind of the highlights. There's a chunk more detail, but I'm going to stop there at the risk of this sounding like a tranquillusionist episode with me just reading out soothing random numbers. So, it's pretty obvious why Tesla's not super fond of this proposed legislation. It's cut out of a big chunk of the incentives, despite being the company that dragged the rest of the auto industry along kicking and screaming. Not to mention that Tesla cars built in America have consistently been rated as the most American cars on the road in terms of part supply and production. Although whether any of that matters, at least in the short term, given other automakers are yet to really ramp up production of their EVs, and Tesla is currently selling every vehicle it can produce, perhaps it doesn't. What about Honda and Toyota? Well, neither of them sell EVs in the US, despite both companies being quick off the mark in the late 90s to produce electric vehicles. The first generation RAV4 EV compares well with the Nissan Leaf produced a decade later, as did Honda's 1997 EV+. But after that promising start, both companies bet heavily on hybrid and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, leaving both automakers with no real offerings in the EV marketplace. And Honda's 2019 Clarity EV, the last pure electric car it sold in the US, it had a range only 10 miles greater than its 90s predecessor. And the Honda Fit EV, a lease-only sub-100 mile vehicle with lackluster performance and charging. In comparison, Toyota's last fully electric vehicle in the US was the second generation RAV4 EV, a fabulous Tesla-engineered car that went out of production way back in 2014 and which is now horribly neglected by both parents. While that car was an excellent offering, its sibling, the Scion IQ EV, is a ridiculously poor attempt at an electric vehicle in any decade of the 21st century. Hell, there were several 1960s EVs that outperform it on every metric. So neither Honda nor Toyota currently have anything on the market and are having to race from a standing start as other automakers are cementing their lead. And as Winter talked about here, Japanese automakers are currently wedded to the hydrogen fuel cell. Come hell or high water, FCEVs are their go-to solution. And for these automakers, it is deeply troubling that the world outside Japan is largely moving to battery electric vehicles, leaving a smaller, much less lucrative market for a technology that they've invested so much money in. And with that has come less buy-in from other automakers and the third parties needed for a successful rollout of the fueling infrastructure for hydrogen. Perhaps even more worryingly, there's a cadre of Chinese automakers desperate to make inroads into the mid-segment European and American market that has for so long been dominated by Japanese and Korean vehicles. If that market goes mainly EV, and there are substantial incentives in place to support those EV suppliers, then suddenly Honda and Toyota may find loyal customers aren't so loyal anymore. So it's unsurprising that this unlikely group has joined forces to try and kill the bill. Whether or not it will pass remains to be seen, and then obviously there's the trial by fire of trying to get things through to a Senate vote. It's definitely not a perfect bill. No bill ever is, but reinstating the incentives for the most popular EVs out there and getting the rebate at the point of sale has the potential to start to really move the needle on EV adoption in the US. Especially with auto unions' conflicted messaging regarding President Biden's EV adoption plans, the ground might be softening up for automakers to get more favourable terms in the bill. Rather than killing it, perhaps they should be working on fixing it. Perhaps then we could all become enchanted and illusioned with Washington. That that's it for today. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and our other two channels, Transport Evolved Take 2 and Transport Evolved Shorts. Yet again, we've been having some weirdness with recommendations, so make sure that you're subscribed. Even if you think you are, just quickly go check. And tell your friends about us too. You could even share it on that Zuckerberg platform. What's it called? Face Off? No, that's not right. Let us know below what you thought of this video, and remember, play nice. If you're not fond of the YouTube comment section, then why not continue this on our Discord server? It's free, and we'll leave the link below. Thanks on behalf of the entire TE crew go out to the folks on my right for being our $15 to $49 a month Patreons. Special thanks to our $50 a month Patreons, David Jankula, Andrew Martin, Guido Drahoa, Brophy Wolf, Tesla in the Gong, Paul Conway, Sean Ueda, Gordon C, Regine Fellows, Anonymous Freak, Jim Burness, Kyle Hodgson, Anthony Coates, Laura Sanborn, Rory Litwin, and Denny Hyde. And our deepest gratitude to our $100 a month Patreon supporters, John Lyons, Marcel Ward, Reggie Watts, JP Fagerback, Will Graylan, Ellery Hensley, and Ian. If you'd like to join the ranks of our wonderful supporters, you'll find links below to Patreon, Bitcoin, and Ko-fi. And of course, you can buy your very own TE swag at our Redbubble store. Thanks for joining me, and as always, keep evolving!